We have some major breaking news this afternoon as it has been announced that NASCAR has handed out some pretty big penalties to Austin Cindric for intentionally right-rearing Ty Dillon down the straightaway at Circuit of the Americas. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel and welcome back to the video. As I just said a Sunday, we got some pretty massive and major breaking news as NASCAR has handed a pretty big penalty out to Austin Cindric for intentionally wrecking Ty Dillon at Circuit of the Americas. On lap 4 of the event at Circuit of the Americas, Ty Dillon had forced Austin Cindric off the racetrack coming down the final corner of the event. And coming down the front straightaway, Austin Cindric had right-reared Ty Dillon down the straightaway, making him hit the outside wall. However, Ty Dillon's race would not come to an end, and it would result in him continuing on. So NASCAR did go ahead and penalize, as reported by Zach Serinelli. Said NASCAR penalized Austin Cindric, driver of the number 2 Team Penske Ford, on Wednesday after an incident between him and Ty Dillon in last Sunday's Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas. Of course, early in Sunday's race, Cindric had contact with the right rear of Dillon's number 10 machine, which resulted in Dillon end up spinning and got right reared. As a result, because of this, Cindric has lost 50 driver points and was fined $50,000, dropping him from 11th in the standings all the way down to 34th in the standings. NASCAR apparently stopped short of giving him a one-race suspension, something it did previously for drivers like Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott, because it was done on a road course and not done on a 1.5-mile super speedway. They said that's the big reason with the lower speeds and tighter confines, and it didn't lead to a caution flag being the other reason why NASCAR did not go ahead and throw a suspension. This penalty is very similar to the one that Noah Gragson had received, I believe, back in 2022, when he intentionally wrecked Sage Karam, I believe about halfway through the event. This resulted in a big crash that took place behind him. Multiple drivers like Josh Bilicki, Parker Clearman, Tyler Reddick, and other drivers in the field were collected in that big crash, and there was a lot of really scary incidents that happened during that wreck. I believe Brandon Brown also, I believe, is still racing at the time, was collected in that crash as well. I am glad to see the NASCAR is going ahead and handing out some pretty big penalties here to Austin Cindric, because in my opinion, what Austin Cindric did at Circuit Americas absolutely crossed the line. Now, did Austin Cindric have a right to be upset with Ty Dillon for what he did to him earlier in the corner? Yeah, I would say he definitely did, but right-rearing somebody down the straightaway is just not acceptable. That's one of the worst things you can do as a race car driver, and it doesn't take talent to go ahead and right-rear somebody down the straightaway. Now, personally, though, I think regardless of type of track, whether it is a 1.5-mile track, a 2-mile track, or a small track like a short track of a road course, I think a driver should be suspended for right-rearing somebody down the straightaway, because that is extremely dangerous. Again, I think the reason that NASCAR did not suspend Austin Cindric is because of the tighter confines. But I find it to be very, very inconsistent, considering NASCAR has multiple times suspended drivers for right-rearing. We already talked about it. Bubba Wallace in 2022. Kyle Larson, they got the dirty air on Bubba Wallace's car, I believe about 100 laps in the event at the start of stage number 2. And basically, Bubba got on the wall. Bubba would go ahead and right-rear Kyle Larson down the straightaway to 175 miles an hour, and Cristobal got collected in the crash. Bubba Wallace would be suspended for that event, but no points penalties or driver point penalties came in from that. Then 2 years ago in 2023, Denny Hamlin, I believe, had forced Chase Elliott into the outside wall, and Chase would right-rear Denny Hamlin down the straightaway, and Chase would get suspended for one race because of that. That's one of the big reasons why Chase Elliott did not end up making the playoffs in 2023 after coming back from his injury early in the season. I think, and this is probably also kind of similar to what happened to Carson Hocevar when he right-reared, I believe it was Colby Howard in 2022 or 2023 at IRP, when he right-reared him, and Colby Howard was not happy about that. I don't believe NASCAR took any action there. Kind of similar to what I believe Corey LaJoie did last year, I'm pretty sure, where at Pocono, where LaJoie intentionally wrecked Kyle Busch in the corner and just made a really big mistake, and multiple cars got caught up in the incident. I think NASCAR, though, like I said, probably should have suspended Austin Cindric here. I think a one-race suspension would have been the way to go. I do think because of the new penalties that are coming into play, and with the new playoff rules that are coming into play for the waivers, with it not being a medical reason or being a reason of age, I do think that's one reason why NASCAR also decided to go ahead and not suspend him, because I think they're worried that we would see the playoff waiver come into play. because Austin Cindric does, I believe, have a ton of points right now, and had he basically had to go through the playoff waiver for the suspension, he probably would have been granted, but if he does somehow make the playoffs, he would start back at square zero, because they're not going to be allowing that kind of stuff going forward. If you miss a race, not for a medical reason, NASCAR has the right to go ahead and take away all your playoff points, and you're going to start at zero, and you're going to be in a very much detrimental position going into the rest of the races. I think NASCAR, at least here, was a little consistent in some areas, but I also think it's inconsistent because if you're going to suspend Bubba Wallace for what he did at Vegas 3 years ago, and you're going to suspend Chase Elliott a couple years ago, I personally think you should suspend Austin Cindric because, like I've already mentioned and said, I think it needs to be consistent across the board. I don't think one driver should be allowed to get to do this kind of stuff because now you're going to have people saying that Team Penske is getting favored at this point. I don't think that's the case here, but it seems like to some people, Team Penske is getting favored here a little bit. To me, I think Austin Cindric probably should have been suspended. I don't know if they're going to appeal this. I'd have to think that Austin Cindric is probably not going to appeal this at this point because I think that the penalty, at least somewhat, was just, but at the same time, I do think a suspension was absolutely necessary here, and I do think it was absolutely worthy. And the fact that they probably should have suspended, I think, like I said, a one-race suspension should be the mandatory for right rearing somebody down the straightaway. I mean, Bubba Wallace got basically the same penalty in Chicago last year for basically running into the back of Alex Bowman after the race had concluded, and he literally only touched him a little bit. It wasn't even that much contact, and the race was already over. I don't like the inconsistency here, and I think NASCAR should have suspended him. I personally think they should have because I think that you should have suspended Austin Cindric here because I think it should be regardless of the type of track that they're running at. It needs to be consistent. And I don't love the fact that NASCAR has a major issue and major problem of being consistent in these situations because now this is going to be a talking point. Should have he been suspended? Because I think he should have been suspended for one race. I do get that they have the new playoff stuff that's come into play this year, but at the same time, you've got to make it a little more consistent going forward. And if you can't be consistent in some of those areas, you're going to have these talking points that are going to come up. To me, like I already said, I think Cindric should have been suspended for one race. I'm glad NASCAR took some action here where they did go ahead and fine him for the situation, gave him a points penalty, because you're going to have drivers that are going to do this kind of stuff, and they're going to reach lines, and I think you're going to see drivers going forward, they may just go ahead and say, hey, I may not get suspended at a short track for this, or may not get suspended at road course for right rearing. You're going to see more of these incidents going forward, and I think that there should have been a suspension, because then drivers and teams are going to look at this and say, I'm not going to do that again because I might end up getting a suspension. So I think it should have been consistent at this point. I'm not the biggest fan of him not being suspended for the incident, but I'm at least glad to see they went ahead and gave him a penalty for this situation, in my opinion. So, that is going to be our today's special breaking news report on Austin Cindric getting a penalty. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. List goes below that, and comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Austin Cindric should have been suspended for right rearing Ty Dillon down the straightaway at COTA? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, you're going to see the race picks for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Phoenix, and then you're also going to see tomorrow the race picks for the Cup race at Phoenix, and then, of course, the paint scheme video as well. You're going to have content on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, the lawsuit between 2311 and front row, the countersuit that's come up very recently, Michael Jordan, Curtis Polk being involved with that, Connor Zillage, Red Bull, Matt DiBenedetto, Cletus McFarlane, and other drivers in the field like Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and all the good stuff like Ross Chastain, and all the other big stories on the channel we'll be talking about very, very soon. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.